How's it going, everybody? So in this video, we're going to be discussing a lot of the flaws in the scientific method surrounding health and nutrition science, and basically how insignificant the evidence tends to be surrounding a wide majority of topics that is so heavily debated in the health and nutrition science community, and is also the foundation for the entire paradigm and belief system surrounding what people do in its entirety, as in recommendations that are made that form the basis of someone's entire nutrition and diet strategy, or what causes diseases, what improves health. I'm going to be explaining why the vast majority of the evidence doesn't show a significant magnitude of effect. There's confounding variables that plague every single freaking study. And even if you take the findings at face value, the magnitude of effect of most interventions and the relative risk improvement in a lot of cohort studies and population studies is so insignificant that none of this stuff serves as meaningful evidence, in generally speaking, by itself. And a lot of these belief systems surrounding cardiovascular disease and what causes it, what foods might cause disease, the evidence is so exaggerated. It's almost like we have nothing to really go based from empirical evidence. And in this video, basically, I present the problem with all of this. But the solution, I'll make a completely separate video on. Now, if you disagree with anything I say in this video, please post a detailed comment, because I care about the subject so much, and I want to fully understand it deeper. So if you disagree with me, I need a detailed explanation as to why. If you just leave me a comment down in the comments saying I'm dumb, or it's anti-science, or it's pseudo, or whatever, that is even more insignificant than most of the evidence I'm going to be talking about. It helps nobody. It really, all it's doing is, like, you're just trying to back up your own bias and discredit me in your own head. You're not actually providing value to anybody. And most of the people that watch my videos, they also want to read your comment and get value from it. So explain deeper than just, you disagree with me. Explain why. Explain the points that you disagree with. Okay? And send me links, evidence, books. I'd love to read deeper if there's something I might be wrong on or something I missed. Thanks. So this video is also going to serve as kind of like an experiment of me getting used to this fucking microphone. Because, yeah, I got a microphone. No, it's not a Christmas present. Yes, this is being recorded on Christmas. But no, this is not a Christmas present. But I suppose you can count it as a Christmas present. Basically, my mother has been the CEO of her own business for like 20 years now, and she happened to get this microphone for a previous consulting position she had, whatever, yada yada. Oh no, she made a Venmo, or not Venmo, what is the word? Whatever, Udemy or whatever. She made like a freaking instructional course for someone and used this at that time. And then she didn't need it anymore, so she listened to some of my videos and said, Wolfgang, you need a microphone. So here I am with this microphone. So this is the very first time ever using this microphone. So if it goes in and out, I apologize. I will attempt to get used to this over time. Damn it. I'm sure a lot of people have, a lot of people have told me I needed a microphone and shit. So we will see how this goes. Can you hear me drinking my delicious coffee using this high-def mic? All right, so what am I drinking, first of all? I am drinking a organic, single origin coffee, shade grown, sun dried from Peru. Pretty delicious. Blended with some reishi. I took a shit ton of tonic herbs and other things this morning. This has a teaspoon of reishi in it. And I also put 400 milligrams of theanine in my coffee this morning. But this is my second round of coffee today. All right, you guys, let's get into it. There's a couple of different topics I want to cover today. I only have an hour and 30 minutes before I have to be at my family's for Christmas dinner and whatnot. So let's try to start talking about this. Basically, man, it is just insane how hyped up things like a high polyphenol diet, a high fiber diet, and shit like that actually is. Everybody basically by default tells you it is vitally important. Like if you want to be healthy, you need to eat 40 grams of fiber a day. If you want to be healthy, you need to be cramming all the polyphenols into your mouth every single day. Diet needs to be like, a fucking cherry or like a flower orchard or whatever of polyphenols, And they'll hype all this crap up. And then when you actually look at the research, you see a very low magnitude of effect of polyphenols in a general sense. And that includes both through cohort studies that make correlations, as well as intervention trials that actually studies the intervention itself and compares it to a placebo group. Very rarely do you see anything close to proof that something works. And when I'm saying anything close to proof, I mean over 20% relative difference compared to placebo. You don't really see anything like that. You definitely don't see absolute proof, but we're talking some kind of evidence that shows, this, has a clear effect. Almost never are effects clear from intervention trials, from most interventions, which is why in nutrition science we have so much debate over things like saturated fat. I mean, there's no like clear cut, solid evidence that shows clearly that eating foods high in saturated fat actually play a causal role in heart disease. Instead, what you'll find, what these experts that claim there is a clear link, they'll send you links to review articles, consensus statements, and things like this, where they combine findings from genetic polymorphism studies, where they take populations of people that have genetically high cholesterol and genetically low cholesterol, and then they correlate that with health outcomes, and then they extrapolate that to the general population who do not have these genetic polymorphisms, these cholesterol family, these genetic cholesterol disorders. Like population studies on people with genes that modify cholesterol levels is not the same thing as an average person who eats high saturated fat and has a natural increase in cholesterol due to their diet high in saturated fat. It's not the same thing. The same thing can be, and then they'll mix those types of studies though with intervention trials and cohort studies on patients taking statin drugs, and then they'll extrapolate that to the average population. And so basically what they do, what you'll see in some of these papers I'm talking about, is they'll take groups of people that are being treated with statin drugs, and then they have pre-existing risk of heart disease or pre-existing heart disease usually, and they'll compare them to groups of people that have the same risk of heart disease or the same incidence of heart disease who don't take statin drugs. And there's a lot of different kind of variations of these studies but they're all done on cholesterol-lowering drugs, statin drugs. And they're like, look, people who take statin drugs have a lower risk of heart disease, or a lower risk of repeated heart attacks after already having a heart attack before. Or, statin drugs seem to lower your risk of all-cause mortality in people who have pre-existing heart conditions, usually. So it's like, okay, and they're like, yeah, and you can see a direct decrease in further heart complications after statin drug treatments. There's a direct dose-dependent response based on LDL levels. Like, the lower your LDL level goes with statin drugs, the lower your risk of heart disease in the future in statin drug intervention trials. So, and they'll extrapolate that again, or they'll exaggerate that. They'll try to project that onto the general population who eats a diet that increases LDL cholesterol or decreases LDL cholesterol. And they'll be like, look, you see, the lower your LDL level, the freaking better your health outcomes, lower risk of your heart disease. So stop eating saturated fat, because it will, it's the only metric of nutrition that has been shown without a shadow of a doubt in metabolic ward studies to modify LDL levels. And there's various other things that can change LDL levels, but it is a fact that saturated fat increase in the diet will, like in a dose-dependent response, increase LDL. And then there's going to be a cutoff point where your body doesn't create more LDL from saturated fat intake past a certain point. And that's also why LDL levels at baseline are so important. Otherwise, you won't see an increase if people already have pre-existing high LDL. But what I'm trying to say here is scientific evidence as far as health outcomes and nutrition, it doesn't paint clear pictures of anything. When you see people who leave comments on YouTube videos asking for scientific proof of something, or even evidence a lot of times. So, first of all, I think it's important that we do have scientific evidence to support our claims. I think that's important. And I think asking for evidence on a subject is important. Especially, like, part of this is because someone might be making a claim that's based on evidence, but the evidence the evidence that they're basing their claim on has such a low magnitude of effect, or the study design isn't that which can provide a causal link, the evidence might not be adequate to support their claim. And that does not mean that their claim is wrong, but it means that there is warrant for further debate and questioning and discussion. But the problem with a lot of people is they'll ask for evidence as kind of like an argument in and of itself. They'll be like, there's no evidence to support that claim, therefore what you're saying is not credible. Or they'll be like, can you send me the reference to that study, please? To try to discredit whatever the person's saying. So it's a weird dynamic, and I always ask for evidence nowadays because I realize the other day I was on Instagram, and I see shit like this all the time on Instagram. I kind of just don't get on Instagram as much consuming information anymore other than posting my own shit. It was like a pomegranate juice advertisement, and the pomegranate juice advertisement, you've probably seen these. It's like Palm or whatever, the juice. It said, fuel your workout with antioxidants. Palm pomegranate juice has 700 milligrams of polyphenols per serving. And then it said like some about improving performance and exercise and this and that with antioxidants. Okay. And so I posted a comment asking for the evidence that, first of all, that I want to see evidence that pomegranate polyphenols have antioxidant activity. So I asked for intervention trials that show an increase in some blood markers of antioxidant status. Okay? The reason I asked for that question is because polyphenols have kind of just been thought, hypothesized, suspected to have antioxidant effect. But these days, our understanding of polyphenols is that they actually seem to have more complicated mechanisms that don't serve directly as antioxidants. A lot of times, what a lot of these antioxidants seem to do is they might have a hormetic effect like exercise, where they cause a certain stress on the body, which upregulates our own endogenous antioxidant production, kind of like as an immune strengthening effect, rather than being direct antioxidants themselves. So what that means is if pomegranate polyphenols are not antioxidants, like most polyphenols don't seem to be, and they might strengthen the body's upregulation of its own antioxidants, then a pomegranate juice manufacturer claiming that their product fuels exercise with antioxidants, which, by the way, you don't fuel exercise with antioxidants. You fuel exercise with fatty acid substrates, carbohydrates, and amino acids to varying degrees through different mechanisms. Antioxidants are not energy. They don't fuel jack shit. In fact, there's some evidence that suggests some antioxidants might fuel cancer growth over a period of time, but it's only correlation in nature. So it's only correlation studies. So already, even if pomegranate their polyphenols did have antioxidant activity, it doesn't fuel exercise. But that's what the advertisement was saying. Fuel your exercise antioxidants from pomegranate juice. Second of all, polyphenols and pomegranate juice don't seem to have an antioxidant effect anyway. So, that is false advertisement through both means. So then the third thing is, well, what does pomegranate juice even do, right? I mean, it clearly does not do what it's being advertised to do in those advertisements. And this pomegranate juice manufacturer's been around for over a decade now, as far as I'm aware. It's been around for a long freaking time, okay? Like at least 8 years now or something. And so marketing that shit, it's crazy. It's crazy that a manufacturer can say something like that on pomegranate juice. But then we have all of these supplements that have been, these herbs that have been used for thousands of years, like longer than pharmaceuticals, in a traditional system of medicine, that have clear effects. And we have intervention trials now that show this, like a similar magnitude of effect for these herbs as a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. And keep in mind, the magnitude of effect of most pharmaceutical drugs, most supplements, and herbs is not that high. You might see like a 20% in decreased risk of a disease, or a 20% improvement, for example, in a certain health outcome or marker in a study, but clinically that is insignificant when we actually try to look at its absolute effect. And people don't understand the difference between 1 out of 10 people having heart disease and 2 out of 10 people having heart disease. It's an improvement, but it's not enough to really show that the intervention works, if that makes sense. Like, let's say like smoking causes cancer, right? That's a good claim. Well, what is the magnitude of effect of cigarette smoke on cancer? Well, it's a difference of, placebo group showing 1 out of 10 people might get cancer. Compare that to maybe 5 out of 10 at the minimum. That's what, my math is going to be butchered, but like a 5 times increase in absolute outcomes. That's pretty hardcore. Anyway, So the point here is like, first of all, where's the studies that show fucking pomegranate juice actually does jack shit? Like, I mean, are you going to drink pomegranate juice and actually feel like your performance increased? Like, mind you, I'm not saying there's not potential benefits. You know, typically things like beet juice and pomegranates and things with dark red, even things like red maca, have been used for thousands of years in traditional medicine for things like urinary tract disorders, as well as improving blood flow and nitric oxide boosting type of things, which we see there's some mechanistic data and some intervention data to support some of these polyphenols responsible for, the red pigmentation, purple pigmentation in these plants to improve blood flow, yada, yada. The magnitude effect in intervention trials is not that great, but that could potentially improve your exercise performance, not by antioxidant benefits and not by fueling exercise like it's some kind of gas for your car or some shit, but more so just by dilating blood vessels and improving blood flow. You know, ginger will do a similar effect on all accounts, actually, including respiratory cleansing, if you want to call it that. But anyway, all I'm getting at is you're not going to drink pomegranate juice and feel like you're on steroids. Or even if you compare pomegranate juice, and I'd love to see a study on this, pomegranate juice, sugar-free, just the polyphenols, right? Or the so-called antioxidants, which don't exist in there, outside of like vitamin C content, whatever. But compare the polyphenols with no sugar in pomegranate juice to a mixture of fructose and dextrose powder. You will probably find a stronger improvement in performance in the dextrose/fructose powder group compared to the sugar-free pomegranate juice group. The reason why is because dextrose powder and high fructose corn syrup or whatever, actually just fructose, high fructose corn syrup actually is mostly sucrose. It's actually closer to sugar. But you would see there are studies that show a high magnitude of benefit for a fructose and dextrose mixture. That's, glucose/fructose. The reason why you're going to see a benefit in the fructose dextrose intervention compared to sugar-free fucking pomegranate polyphenol group is because sugar directly improves exercise performance. And you know that in the low carb group and a lot of people following me, you're going to, have pushback against that. But we're not talking about dogma. We're trying to evolve past dogma here. All I'm saying is you're more likely to see a benefit from sugar, from something that actually fuels exercise performance. Okay, even something like freaking C8 MCT oil, if you're keto adapted. Compare that. Any kind of energy substrate that's easy to metabolize, because, C8 MCT oil is like bypass the liver, transports straight through the portal vein, direct use of energy, similar to a fast digesting carbohydrate source. That's actually fueling exercise, but you're not going to see that same benefit from just sugar-free polyphenols. Now, if you drink pomegranate juice with extra polyphenols added, you'll probably see a benefit only because pomegranate juice actually has sugar, carbohydrates to fuel exercise. Okay? So anyway, this is a very important example. I spent a shit ton of time just dissecting this stupid advertisement, but with this in mind, okay, look, it's possible that these polyphenols have a benefit. Like I said before, like a lot of people swear by things like beet juice, which have polyphenols similar to pomegranate, okay? And brain health is enhanced by blood flow to the brain, which these things enhance blood flow, okay? We don't really see a high magnitude effective intervention trials, and that's just hard to understand. And so, I mentioned in recent videos how these study designs go down. They'll take 20 elementary school kids, put them on pomegranate juice, and then 20 it'll take 20 elementary school kids, put them on pomegranate juice, 20 elementary school kids, and put them on a sugar-controlled placebo, just like a pomegranate-flavored sugar drink with no polyphenols. Sugar is going to be equated. It better be equated, because if it's not, then the sugar will directly be a confounding variable. And then they make them drink the sugar placebo or the pomegranate juice every day for like 2 months. And they do 3 different cognitive tests at the beginning of the study and 3 different those same tests at the end of the 2-month study. And then they'll compare the scores on the tests between the polyphenol group, the pomegranate juice group, and the sugar group, the sugar drink placebo group. And they'll try to find the effect. And this is actually a very common study design on polyphenol supplemented drinks. And this study exists already on blueberry polyphenols. It's just, And so this is common, and this is how a lot of these intervention trials will go. It's something to a similar effect. And what you almost always will find, and I need to do an even deep dive for another couple months, because I always spend months deep diving on a subject, just being obsessed about it. And then my perspective evolves over time. But basically what you find is like, a 2 to 5% improvement in the polyphenol group compared to placebo, if they even find a benefit at all. And usually it's not consistent. It's like 1 out of the 3 tests you might see that benefit. The other 2 might be statistically insignificant. And just like in the blueberry polyphenol study, like I mentioned before and broke down in detail in my other videos on this last week, basically a lot of these interventions on blueberries don't show any benefit at all. And if they do, it's a 2 to 5% relative improvement from the placebo group. So, and some of these studies are not controlled for sugar content. So maybe the sugar in the placebo group might, be conflicting it. So, it's crazy. You don't see improvements in this. And it reminds me a lot of the antioxidant craze of like the like the late 1900s or whatever. 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. You have all of these people who are like, you need a megadose vitamin C, megadose vitamin A, megadose vitamin E, yada yada. And these are, like well-documented antioxidant supplements. And then you look at cohorts over a long period of time, populations who consume the most of these, not vitamin C, but vitamin E and and beta-carotene, which now we know is not even actually vitamin A, it's a precursor, but has antioxidant activity. We see, no like significant benefits in these populations, and a potential increase in certain cancers in some. So, and the other thing is, you got to ask, well, why were they taking these supplements in the first place? There's usually confounding variables that have more to do with the types of people who will take these interventions, just like red meat intake and healthy user bias, as well as, eating high amounts of fruits and vegetables every day. It's the types of people who do these things. Why exactly are they doing them? Why are these people in these long population studies eating 10 cups of fruits and vegetables a day? Because they are actually healthy and give a fuck about their health. Well, how do you know it's a fruit and vegetable intake and not the fact that they are just trying everything they can to be healthy, so much so that they'll actually spend that much money on fruits and vegetables every day? Avoiding sugar, avoiding trans fats, because they care about their health enough to eat the most fruits and vegetables in the entire population. So I've already discussed all this crap in previous videos, but I'm just really hammering it home that, like, I don't want to sound like I'm saying science is useless, because it's not. But to use science as a guiding principle for why you should do what you do is a fallacy. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use science to help with your decision making. I'm just saying it's like the foundation for most people's paradigm on nutrition and health, and it doesn't work. Well, actually, it's not that it doesn't work. It depends on the scientific paradigm. Here's what I'll tell you. There's a lot of weird philosophies about health and nutrition that would benefit from more scientific rigor. But generally speaking, I would even say maybe a little bit of common sense and looking at what actually happens in the real world and extrapolating that to what we know about diseases and health. Certain people probably shouldn't be doing certain interventions and should probably look at the scientific evidence more. So maybe there's a spectrum of usefulness of science, right? And what I'm talking about is you have a lot of people who follow these raw vegan diets, for example, and they believe in alkalinity, and they're like, yeah, your body's alkaline, cancer is caused by acidity, and unfortunately, we actually have lots of case reports of people who seem to have was it spontaneous remission? Is that what it's called? From cancer when they do a ketogenic protocol in fasting. And it's not a scientific claim. You know, God forbid I say something like that, because then everyone's like, what? There's no scientific evidence for that. As long as it's not replacing chemotherapy, I don't see why it's not, why I can't, whatever. But I have an interview with one of my friends who's done that. There's also Thomas Siegfried, who is a leading scientist in kind of like this underlying cancer metabolism working theory, conducting research on ketogenesis as a therapeutic agent for various types of cancers. So, I mean, it's clear that if meat and acidity rots the stomach, or rots the body and causes cancer, then we wouldn't have people on a ketogenic diet, producing high amounts of keto acids, right? Eating a diet high in amino acids, who probably have a higher net acid load of their kidneys, going into remission on cancer. And obviously, if you know anything about basic physiology, you'll know that, the body as a whole is never alkaline. These people never specify it's the blood. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is, from a scientific perspective, just the most foundational, well-documented things we know about humans that seem to be pretty damn solid. It's it seems like this whole alkaline diet thing's probably not very great, and most of these people who follow these things seem to be pretty mentally ill. But with all of the stuff I've mentioned about how science hardly shows a magnitude of effect of anything, and most of these studies on populations of people have a lot of confounding variables that are more likely the cause of their health benefits, then how do we even know that these alkaline people are actually crazy? And how do I justify saying, these people should probably use a little bit more science and common sense, when science doesn't really show, doesn't show a lot of significant evidence for most of what health science is based upon? Well, and this is where all of the shit gets fuzzy. And this is where I think my own kind of realization came into play. I have such a hard time saying this because, well, even this has flaws in it too, but also just because the scientific community, they're like, oh, that's anti-scientific, but they're completely blind to, first of all, the lack of high magnitude of effect evidence that their shit's based upon, and how much of all of the most effective methods in all of this shit, nutrition, health, reversing disease, and exercise science, how much of it's actually based on trial and error. And in practice, for me personally, how did I heal my health problems? I did a ton of studying. And and the raw vegan shit just showed me basically, actually, I can eat bananas and greens and not, have terrible psoriasis and irritable bowel syndrome, for example, in my case. But then my muscle mass went away, my energy went away, and, started to have severe health problems. But at least my symptoms cleared up, right? My psoriasis went away, my, digestion improved. It's like, yeah, but it's not worth, basically melting to a pile of bones like most of these raw vegan people do. Then I went straight Michael Greger vegan for a long time because that was, according to all these evidence-based gurus, the highest in polyphenols, the highest in fiber, and lo and behold, just adding these whole grains and beans back to my diet and nuts and seeds, I started to have psoriasis worse than ever before, started shitting out my ass. Well, obviously, but, salad shooter. I was shitting salads out my ass and whole grains out my ass, and it was terrible. The worst I ever felt was definitely Michael Greger vegan. And my muscle mass didn't improve because I wasn't digesting any of that. So then I realized it's these whole grains and these high fiber plant foods that are causing my own unique symptoms. So through trial and error, trying all these quacky fucking diet paradigms, I found out actually at the time that if I just ate red meat, eggs, cooked cruciferous vegetables, and various non-starchy vegetables but cooked, and sweet potatoes and yams seemed okay as long as I didn't eat the skins, as well as, raw fruits, that I felt best ever. Basically, it was raw vegan diet with some cooked vegetables and meat. Basically, that was my diet, and it healed all my problems. But if you look at the evidence, you'll see, all of the healthiest people in the world eat these high grain diets and this and that. The blue zones, supposedly, but they eat a lot of beans and this and that. But you'll hear all sorts of weird shit about all of these people, right? And everybody thinks that they're all dogmatic and that the other group is evil and conspiracy and funded by the opposition's financial overlords, right? The meat industry, they're sponsored by Big Meat. The grain industry are sponsored by Big Grain. And this isn't wrong. Most of these studies are funded by, people who profit off of them. And LDL and cholesterol heart disease research is not any different. It's the worst. It's the most heavily funded. And you can definitely see some clear links back to the grain industry with these things. But it is also true that a lot of these studies that are arguing against them are funded by the egg industry and this and that. So again, that does not mean that these studies are useless or are invalid. It just means it's just a reality of how shit works. And then don't even get me started on how they manipulate the findings. And this is probably why you don't really see a high magnitude effect of a lot of things. So this is coming from various researchers that I know, including one of my clients who has a PhD in this stuff. And she was telling me what I've heard many times before, where basically these researchers, they will take 200 different data sets, different metrics that they're testing. They will literally test 200 different things in a cohort study or intervention. 200 different metrics are being tracked, and they will test for all of these things with the intervention, like meat intake, for example. And at the end of the study, they'll just see what metrics that they tracked actually show some kind of finding, and then they'll let all the rest go. And I guess a lot of these studies don't have to show this. But as far as I remember, generally they include all of the data sets and what they test for. And basically it's like throwing a shit ton of eggs at a wall and just seeing what sticks and only publishing that. Now, I'm sure that that's wrong, but if that is true, that's pretty fucked up. And these are things that you generally don't hear on the science consumer side, but only behind the scenes science researchers. But I think that it's pretty easy to figure these things out too. But anyway, no matter what, if you don't see a high magnitude of effect, it's pretty hard to use science as like the be all end all. And if all you have to prove your theory, like, you know how many people, like, the thing is, people actually, they're like, no, freaking, if you eat a bunch of meat and if you eat a bunch of meat and eggs and saturated fat, you will have heart disease. You will die of heart disease, these people say. And then you're like, and for me, I hear this, I'm like, damn, he's so convinced and confident that he has like proof, like people are dropping like flies if they, eating high saturated fat. So, all right, well, where's the science? I've asked Vegan Gains. I've asked some of these evidence-based nutrition doctor people who I like a lot. And then I look at the study and I'm like, oh, look, it's like a giant advertisement for the benefits of statin drugs. And then it shows hunter-gatherer tribes have low LDL cholesterol, probably because they're undernourished, right? These people are starving for food. And it shows monkeys and primates have low LDL cholesterol. This is literally a real thing. People that take heart disease patients that take statin drugs have like a tiny, decrease in risk of further heart complications. And then people with genetically high cholesterol levels have more heart attacks than people with genetically low cholesterol. Like, damn, that's proof right there that the average population who has high LDL levels are fucking on their deathbed. They're on their way to death. Like that's just is like taking all of these like seemingly related things that have serious confounding variables, and then like, we're not primates, we're not freaking free living hunter gatherers who hardly get any food, we're not heart attack patients that are we're not taking statin drugs, we don't want to take statin drugs, we don't have these genetic cholesterol disease, polymorphisms. Why are we using this evidence, right? And to top it all off, you look at the funding, it's all just professors and scientists who are funded by the pharmaceutical industry. All of them. Okay? It's the best evidence we have, though. Right? So you know what? I'm not even going to talk about the answer to this. I'm just presenting the problem here. I'm just presenting the problem, and I'll make another video where I actually talk about what I think is a better approach to demystifying all this. And let me just say, if you're looking for absolute proof that something is true, the closest you're probably going to find it is, number one, if you have intervention trials that show a significant magnitude of effect. And there's very few studies that do. There's one that does, but there's potential errors in it. It's called the A to Z weight loss study. But maybe I'm just saying that because it confirms a bias I might have, right? The full text of the A to Z weight loss study, the abstract only scratches the surface. Why they didn't post the rest of the data set, I don't know. But it's the most significant intervention study comparing plant-based diets to animal-based diets, low-carb to low-fat diets, actually, that actually tests for HDL, freaking hemoglobin A1C, and it's like a whole year-long intervention trial. So Not a lot of people talk about it for some reason. It's the best study I've ever seen. It's like the golden standard. They have 3 times the improvement in the low carb group. But anyway, yeah, I mean, besides that, what do we have? We have, our Facebook communities of people who are eating a certain diet and then getting certain health outcomes. YouTube communities of people who are making videos about their experiences with different diets. We have Reddit groups and forums where people follow certain diets to treat their diseases, and we see what they have. But no, freaking anecdotes are all that matters. Anecdotes are not evidence, right? Anecdotes are shit, right? It's not scientific enough for us. No, we need an intervention trial that shows a freaking 7% relative improvement compared to a placebo group on 1 out of 5 tests that are done. And we also need cohort studies on on thousands of people over decades who are mailed food questionnaires to their mail once every decade to correlate health outcomes with hundreds of confounding variables. That's what we need fucking science, you guys, because that's what's going to save us. The only fucking way that I can feel safe eating the diet I eat is if it's verified by a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials that all show a tiny, insignificant effect that's funded by pharmaceutical companies. I need that freaking evidence, you guys, because my own experience isn't good enough. And these hundreds of thousands of fucking people eating the diet that I fucking eat and have so much good experience with, it's all placebo. Lane Norton told me. Okay, these people on carnivore diets that remove certain foods that seem to be triggering their autoimmune system, it's all placebo. Okay? Again, plant foods are not poison, but I don't think people on elimination diets healing their, or treating their symptoms, I don't think that's placebo. I think we should probably... What the fuck? We need scientific evidence, right? So what science is basically a systematic, questioning and observation of experiences in the outside world to gather evidence, right? But no, these thousands of people, on carnivore, healing their treating their symptoms. There's nothing going on there. It's all the power of the mind. But guess what, guys? The law of attraction is bullshit. It's pseudoscience, right? You can remove gluten and completely remove all the symptoms of fibromyalgia pains, but it's all placebo. But the law of attraction doesn't work. The power of your mind is bullshit. It's not supported by evidence. Science, you guys! Oh my god. Well, to those of you who will watch this entire video, I'm glad you did, because I think the very end, when I finally made my point, pretty substantial. Again, I'm not saying anything absolute, because there's not anything absolute to really say about all this, and that's the entire point. It just, science, health science, nutrition science is like, most people, they'll just use science to back their shit, but they don't actually read science enough to know what the fuck their studies even mean. But then to those of us who actually do take a deep dive and try to fully understand the scientific method and scientific evidence on nutrition and health outcomes, we gotta just face the facts that it's not really that impressive. But the China study, you guys, they took a group of rats, right? And they fed them a known carcinogen, alpha toxin, and then they also fed them a supraphysiological dose of isolated casein protein extracted from the milk. And they showed as long as these rats were eating the milk protein, casein, in such high amounts, they had increased tumor growth with the alpha toxin injection. But if you fed them freaking pea protein, the freaking tumor didn't grow as much. So the conclusion of our study, animal protein, not just milk protein, animal protein is carcinogenic, says Dr. Colin Campbell. But wait, you mean, but alpha toxin contributes to cancer growth either way. And it's such a high amount, and it's in rats. No, you're a human and rats. You're a fucking rat. Fuck. You're gonna die of cancer if you eat animal protein, because casein protein in rats fed alongside alpha toxin kills you and grows cancer. So hopefully you guys know what the fuck I'm trying to say here. Is that this is all bullshit. As far as I need fucking proof. And then head explosion emoji. All right, guys, I'm wired as fuck on coffee, not making sense, and gonna freaking go to my family's food gathering. They said food will be ready at 3:30. I'm gonna play a bunch of video games with my brother, old school PlayStation 2, because that's how we fucking roll. It's the best games ever, with some exceptions. And yeah, so I'll talk to y'all next time. Merry fucking Christmas. But I'm gonna need some science to support that. Fucking Christmas doesn't exist, you guys. I need an intervention trial. All right. Anyway, have a great one. Wait, love. What is love, you guys? Can we get some scientific proof that love exists? How do you guys like my microphone? Let me know in the comments.